Hey, what's going on, everyone? Meteorologist Jonathan Kagas back with you for another edition of Tropics Watch Live. We hang out every Monday at 11, and as necessary, thankfully, there hasn't been many as necessaries for a while now because there hasn't been much going on in the tropics. That could change. We're going to break all that down in the course of this live stream, so gather around, pull up a chair, make yourself comfy. We're going to get real sciencey and break all this down. We're going to go into some pretty high-level stuff here. So if you're interested in that, stick around. We are coming at you live on the New 6 YouTube channel. Of course, clickorlando.com, the Pinpoint Weather app, the Pinpoint Hurricane app, and the New 6 mobile app. So wherever you are, we're there with you. Post in the comments where you're tuning in from if you are watching from YouTube, and if you have any questions along the way, you can post them into the article this live stream is attached to on clickorlando.com, or you can post them right into the YouTube chat, and we will bring over the conversation, and we will have that conversation, because that's what we like to do here. We like to hang out, we like to talk weather, we like to break down the science and meteorology behind things, and then go forward. On that note, the best news of this live stream is that there is no development expected in the short term. That's going to get us right on through the middle of November here. The 7-day tropical development page completely blank. It happened over the weekend. It's been a while since this map has been completely blank with no little blobs hanging out as drawn by the National Hurricane Center. We still have what's left of that disturbance that was designated Invest 97L, still hanging out, bringing some thunderstorms to Central America. The good news, in a way, of course, we don't want anything strong wind-wise. It still brought some flooding and some very heavy rain to Central America this weekend, but it was never able to take advantage of good conditions, good for the storm. There was limited wind shear. The water temperature was jet fuel. The thing is, when you get these tropical systems, they have to kind of consolidate. And what it was never able to do was consolidate, because it was a very broad system that was in the Eastern Caribbean. Let me draw that right there. And then kind of worked its way back over to the Western Caribbean. And it was just never able to consolidate. So thankfully, we didn't have anything strong wind-wise in there. But again, still brought some really heavy rain to parts of Central America this weekend. Now, moving forward, we are going to have to watch, unfortunately, the Western Caribbean once again for more development. And I want to show you this. This is where we start to get into some kind of nerdy stuff, some sciencey stuff. And I want to show you this right here, what this green and brown color on your screen is. We're focused on the right-hand side. That's the United States, the Caribbean, Central America. And what this is showing is upper-level divergence. In order to get thunderstorms to develop, you need to have surface convergence, at least to maintain them. So you need to have air evacuating upstairs in the upper levels of the atmosphere. You need to have the surface winds coming together, so you complete that circulation there. You get that rising motion. You get that lift, if you will. This is the anomaly for that, and you clearly see here that we have a very significant anomaly as we go out 2 weeks' time. So this is on November 19th. This is 2 weeks out. So mid to late November, that second to third week November, we have these green anomalies showing up. Now, if you were with us on Tropics Watch Live like a month ago, we talked about an increase in activity to end October and to start November in the Western Caribbean. We had a tropical depression, and then we had Invest 97L. Thankfully, nothing too strong, but again, the forecast was for some shenanigans in the Western Caribbean in late October and November. That came into fruition because we showed you this map. The anomalies here are much, much stronger. Now, even though the anomalies are stronger, we are starting to lose climatology a little bit. Of course, we are still in hurricane season at that point. It runs all the way through the month of November, but we're starting to lose climatology. With that said, it hasn't really been a climatological year. We've had an El Nino, we've had a busy year, and we've still had a lot of storms, and the water temperature is still super, super warm. So we're going to get all into that. I'm going to show you some models coming up. This is the ensemble, and we're looking towards the 15th to 20th. And again, we're going to take everything with a grain of salt, and that is why I want to show you the ensembles. I like to show you guys the why rather than just plaster models everywhere, because it doesn't do anybody good. And what we look to see if a model is going to verify, or if an ensemble, in this case, is going to verify, we have to see if there's kind of a trigger in the atmosphere. And that trigger there is the anomaly that I just showed you, is that big blob of green popping up in the really the entire Western Atlantic into the Caribbean. So that's significant. Okay, so that we see that, and it's like, okay, do we have models biting? So we're going to look at the ensemble. This is the European ensemble, and there are a few members on board. This is through the 16th and 17th. So again, this does not go out as far as the GFS, and it's really closer to the 20th that I think we're going to start to maybe see something trying to materialize. Timeout. At the very least, I just want to say this, I am expecting a lot of thunderstorm activity in northwestern South America through Cuba, Jamaica, Yucatan, Belize, Honduras, Nicaragua, Panama, Costa Rica, you name it, Central America, northern South America, the Caribbean. I do think it's going to be kind of an ugly go of things with a lot of thunderstorms around. The question is, will they consolidate? The Euro on board just a smidge as we get towards the 16th, but if this went out to the 20th, it'd be interested to see what this would show, because I do think as we get closer to the 20th, that's when we're going to start to see something. Now, the GFS, I think it might be out to lunch on the stronger side. It's got some pretty strong members in here. Each one of these lines represent where we could have a storm. And again, it's the same storm, so you're looking for the cluster, but it's just each member of that model's kind of solution to that storm. So the more members that are on board, the higher confidence we have. The GFS wants something. The European is like, okay, maybe. It's kind of like hinting at it a little bit. But again, what we look at in this situation is, okay, well, we do have a giant forcing mechanism, so that's why you pay attention, not just because a model or an ensemble is showing it, but because we do have some scientific and meteorological ground truth. We have the why to the could this happen. So that's important. All right, let me just check in on some comments here to see if anybody's commenting, and welcome everybody. Post in the comments where you are tuning in from. Again, if you have any questions, hit me up. Post that in the comment section if you're watching on YouTube, if you're watching on clickorlando.com. Hope everybody is doing well and enjoyed some of the crisp weather that is going away, but that is a story for another time. All right. The GFS, the parent one, I never like to look at just run-to-run models. We do look for run-to-run consistency in an individual model, but what the deal with, again, looking at individual model runs is that they're going to change. It's the windshield wiper effect. Now, the GFS, we showed you the ensembles, and the parent model itself does want a system. That's the kind of thing we look for there. That red kind of bullseye right there. That's the low-level spin, the vorticity, as we call it, in the weather world. Here is a cold front here. So, again, if there were to be something to develop in the Western Caribbean, it would likely stay in the Caribbean and not have a shot to lift up. There's also high pressure building behind that cold front there that would help to suppress anything that would try to come up. The only way that it could lift is if this high pressure got way out here and then it kind of rode the back end up. It gets really, really hard for a system to impact the U.S. the later we get into November. Of course, we had Nicole. That was a weird storm and came out of that way. So something completely different than the scenario that we are talking about. But always watching, of course. The European, just like its ensembles, it's not bullish on this. It is on the bearish side again, and it has some thunderstorms down there, and that's going to be the one thing. But that's what we'll watch. The one interesting thing here is the cold front much faster. The high pressure is right here. So if we did get something to develop in that time frame, it might have a tendency to come a little further north than what the GFS said. But that is something that is so far out into the future. We're talking 10 to 14 days away that those little nuances wouldn't be able to be kind of observed until we get there. Is the environment going to be okay? We do have the favorability in terms of the rising motion. What we're looking at here is the darker the blue, the stronger the wind shear is, and we have a lot of it into the Gulf of Mexico. So this is going to be 10 days away here. This is going to be not this Thursday coming up, but this is next Thursday as we venture through the middle, the 15th, 16th time frame of November. We have a lot of wind shear here. So again, if anything tried to come up, it would get blasted by a very strong jet stream. There's a little bit of wind shear here, not a ton, but we do have a little bit in the Eastern Caribbean and Western Caribbean. There's an area with no color showing up just right in there. That's where the environment is super favorable for development. Again, this is way too far out to even get into anything like that. Nonetheless, it is something that we're going to be watching, the environment coming into play. I just wanted to show you that we do have a quasi-favorable environment, even though we are starting to lose climatology the deeper we get into play. Where I'm going to contradict myself right away in saying that we're losing climatology. We still have ample fuel. This is the tropical cyclone heat potential. You know that I like to show you this a lot because it tells the story here. So we're losing fuel for storms in the Southwest Atlantic and Southwest Gulf of Mexico. So that is because we've had cold fronts come through. We've turned up the water. We have the water temperature cooling down. It's still warm enough to support a tropical system right now, at least in some parts of the Gulf of Mexico. But the real juice is right in here, where you're seeing the oranges, that peach color, right through here, the Western Caribbean through about Jamaica, south of Cuba, and then to the west of Haiti. That is where the heat potential is very high. And if you've been watching this channel a lot through hurricane season, and I hope you have. And if you have found this content helpful, hit that subscribe button if you enjoy these live streams, Tropics Watch Live. But that is because of the heat potential is not only the warm sea surface temperature, it takes into account the depth of that warm water. So when a storm goes over it and it upwells and brings up some of that cooler water that resides beneath the surface, it's not really all that cool to kind of choke out the storm. So it's still being able to feed off of that energy. And that's what happens, at least on this scale, when we get that peach color showing up. And there's a lot of it still in the central and especially Western Caribbean. So that's what we are going to watch going forward. I mentioned about how warm it is. These are the anomalies. When you start to get into the orange and red, that's where you still have, again, really abnormally warm water temperatures. A degree or two, maybe even 3 degrees, especially in the red here, closer to South America, a degree Celsius above normal. I still have patches, anyway, of that in the Gulf of Mexico, but right about now we're running closer to normal, maybe just a hair above. And then what is also something that we would watch deeper into the season, maybe even beyond the season, let me zoom back out because my computer went crazy, is this area in the subtropics. So when we talk about having 2 names left on the season, and I will show you those names, I think it's high if we don't get something in the Caribbean to consolidate over the next 2 weeks. And again, I do think at the very least we're going to have a lot of activity down there in terms of thunderstorm potential. The opportunity for a subtropical system or even a tropical system in the subtropics is going to be fairly high. Look at the anomalies here. I mean, we're way above average, 2 to 3 degrees Celsius above normal out here. So we could get these storms that roll off of the United States and kind of work this way, and then eventually forming into something tropical or subtropical as we get into late November, maybe December, maybe to kick things off super early in January. And again, that's something that we'd be watching for late into the season or even early next season, just because of how warm the water temperature is. I mean, get these mid-latitude cyclones kind of going under transition and all that stuff to maybe get a tropical system out of the deal. So I mentioned about kind of the where we stand, and that's important. It's been a very busy season. Thankfully, for the most part, we haven't had too much. Again, that's with the exception of Idalia. That was a really nasty storm, of course. Category 4 made landfall as a Category 3, of course, in the Panhandle, really closer to the Big Bend portion of Florida. A lot of people say that it hasn't been busy this year. And I mean, I'm glad that that is the perception because it hasn't really impacted land a ton. Again, it certainly has, and I don't want to discount the nasty stuff and the damage that we got in Florida from Idalia, but it hasn't been like, say, 2004 or 2005, where we just had gangbusters, tons of storms impacting land. But it has been a busy season. And we've had a Category 5, we had 2 Category 4s, we had a bunch of hurricanes. So the forecast for an above normal year in an El Nino season, 100% verified. I'm just glad that a lot of these haven't had the shot to reach land. Now, if we do use up Vince and Whitney, we go to that supplemental list that we have. Remember, back in 2021, really in 2020, after the hyperactive season that we had, Hurricane Center, really the World Meteorological Organization, retired the entirety of the Greek alphabet because of the warmer waters on the shoulder of the season, both in kind of April, May, and then maybe December, January as well. With the warming oceans, we have a higher probability of getting those subtropical storms, maybe even a tropical storm, but we do name the subtropical. The Hurricane Center does name the subtropical systems. So that's one of the reasons why they decided to retire the Greek alphabet completely, because there's the likelihood of getting into that with the warmer ocean and better satellite data. That's the other thing, too. We have better data that is able to determine, okay, do we have a closed circulation to define a tropical cyclone, a tropical system out in the Atlantic or wherever, really. But the better satellite technology combined with a warming ocean will likely lead to a higher probability of naming storms and a higher probability of exhausting the entirety of the list, which we are close to doing this year. But instead, they have a new supplemental list of names, if necessary, to complete the season. And again, the deal with this is that if a storm would need to be retired, they could just replace it with that letter rather than having to replace a letter of the alphabet, which is kind of impossible. You can't kind of retire a whole letter. So that's why they got rid of that. So I think that was a smart move by the World Meteorological Organization and the Hurricane Center. Here we go. We're almost done. We are at the tail end here of the second peak, that sharp decline in tropical activity as we move through the first couple of days of November. Now, remember, we had Hurricane Nicole hit Florida last year, so we still have things that are possible, but that is a super rarity. I think it's 8 times Florida's been hit in November by a tropical storm or hurricane. Nicole was only the 3rd time a hurricane ever hit the state of Florida in November. It happens, but man, that is super rare. And again, just wanted to end on the ace. Hey, Tommy Lee, what's going on, my friend, in Melbourne? Thanks for joining the live stream again. Always good to see you. Thank you to everybody that's tuning in, no matter where you're tuning in from. And again, we're everywhere. News 6 Plus, YouTube, on our clickorlando.com channel, and clickorlando.com, the News 6 app, the Pinpoint Weather app, the Pinpoint Hurricane app. Great tool to track these storms. Ace to date, 160. The average is 123. It has been an active season. Thankfully, most of the action has not impacted land. Alrighty, guys. Thank you a ton for tuning in. We don't have too many more of these left as we wrap up November. It's crazy. But that's the way the cookie crumbles, and hopefully we don't talk too much more in between, because that would mean that we end this quietly. We are watching the Western Caribbean for more activity. I showed you the science behind that and all of the above. If you have enjoyed this live stream, and thank you guys for tuning in, please hit that thumbs up button. If you want to stay updated on the rest of hurricane season, and if you live in Florida and want to stay updated on all things Florida weather, also, I would love it if you hit subscribe. The reason could be an active year this year with severe weather. I have a YouTube video on that. Just search Winter Forecast Florida, and that will come up for you. Thank you so much for tuning in, guys. We'll catch you next time.